Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into the ethics of wealth in a world grappling with poverty. We live in a world where technological advancements have created unprecedented opportunities for wealth creation. Billionaires are minted seemingly overnight, and the gap between the haves and the have-nots continues to widen. But while some celebrate capitalism, others question a system that allows such stark disparities. Is it morally justifiable to accumulate vast fortunes while billions struggle to survive? These are just some of the questions we'll be grappling with today, so buckle up. Let's face it, the numbers are staggering. The richest 1% of the world's population now owns more than half of the world's wealth. A tiny fraction of humanity controls more resources than the remaining 99% combined. Meanwhile, millions struggle to access basic necessities like food, water, and shelter. Children go to bed hungry, families are torn apart by poverty, and countless individuals are denied access to healthcare and education. Can we justify living in opulent luxury while others struggle to survive? This isn't just about numbers, it's about real people's lives. It's about the single mother working 3 jobs to put food on the table. Their stories matter, and their struggles deserve our attention. Now you might be thinking, what can I, one person, do about it? And that's a valid question. It's easy to feel powerless in the face of such overwhelming global challenges. But each of us has a role to play in shaping a more just and equitable world. The first step is to educate ourselves about the root causes of poverty and inequality. We need to understand the systemic factors that perpetuate these issues. Once we have a deeper understanding, we can start to explore potential solutions. From supporting organizations to advocating for policy changes, there are countless ways to make a difference. Remember, even small actions can have a ripple effect. Extreme wealth inequality exists. Is having wealth inherently unethical? Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. Imagine you work hard, innovate, and build a successful business. You become wealthy. Is that wrong? Financial success can be a testament to hard work and ingenuity. It's the driving force behind innovation and progress. Profit motivates companies to develop new technologies and create jobs. Without wealth creation, would we push boundaries and improve our lives? But vast wealth often comes at a cost. Profit can lead to exploitation and environmental degradation. Think about industries built on unsustainable practices. Are those industries unethical because they generate wealth, or is it their methods? It's a moral tightrope walk. Navigating this terrain requires confronting uncomfortable truths about our values and systems. Let's face it, the world wasn't designed with equal opportunity in mind. From the legacy of colonialism to systemic racism and gender discrimination, the deck has always been stacked against certain groups. Generations of oppression and disadvantage have created deep-rooted inequalities that continue to shape the lives of millions around the world. If you're born into poverty, lack access to quality education, and face discrimination in the job market, how likely are you to climb the economic ladder and achieve financial security? It's not impossible, but it's certainly an uphill battle. And for many, the systems in place feel designed to keep them trapped in a cycle of poverty. This isn't about blaming individuals or promoting a victimhood mentality. It's about acknowledging the very real barriers that prevent people from reaching their full potential. It's about recognizing that the playing field isn't level, and that true equality requires more than just individual effort. It demands systemic change. So, when we talk about the ethics of wealth in a world with so much poverty, we can't ignore the historical and structural factors that have created and perpetuated this disparity. Here's another layer to this ethical onion-inherited wealth. We often celebrate self-made millionaires and billionaires, those who seemingly pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and achieved the American dream. But what about those who inherit their fortunes? What about the children of privilege who are born into wealth and opportunity, never having to worry about student loans or making rent? Is it inherently fair that some individuals start the race with a massive head start simply because of the families they were born into? Is it ethical for them to benefit from the accumulated wealth of previous generations, especially if that wealth was acquired through questionable means or exploitation? Now, I'm not saying that all inherited wealth is inherently unethical, or that every wealthy heir is out of touch with reality, but it's a conversation we need to have. Because when we talk about wealth inequality, we can't ignore the role that inheritance plays in perpetuating the gap between the haves and the have-nots. It raises questions about fairness, opportunity, and the very definition of a just society. and it challenges us to rethink our notions of meritocracy and the American dream. Alright, let's get philosophical for a minute. When it comes to the ethics of wealth and poverty, there are a few big schools of thought. Utilitarianism says the most ethical action creates the greatest happiness for the greatest number. Deontology focuses on the inherent rightness or wrongness of actions. Virtue ethics emphasizes the character of the moral agent. What kind of person am I if I prioritize my own wealth over others' suffering? Let's unpack utilitarianism. Maximizing happiness seems appealing. Redistributing wealth could lead to greater happiness. A world where everyone's needs are met is happier. Taxing the wealthy for social safety nets could create equity. Diminishing marginal utility suggests wealth helps the poor more. Critics argue measuring happiness and predicting outcomes is hard. Redistribution might infringe on liberty and discourage innovation. Will people work hard if wealth is redistributed? It's a complex issue with no easy answers. Now let's shift gears to deontology. Remember, deontologists believe in universal moral principles that guide our actions regardless of their consequences. So, when it comes to wealth and poverty, a deontologist might argue that we have a moral duty to help those in need, simply because it's the right thing to do. They might point to Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, which states that we should act only according to rules that we could universalize. In other words, if everyone had a moral obligation to help those in need, wouldn't the world be a better place? Wouldn't we all be obligated to contribute to a more just and equitable society? Deontologists might argue that wealth accumulation, especially when it comes at the expense of others, violates this universal principle. They might advocate for ethical consumption, fair trade practices, and a more just economic system that prioritizes the well-being of all people, not just the privileged few. Of course, critics of deontology might argue that it's too rigid and inflexible. What happens when moral duties conflict? What happens when helping one person means harming another? It's a valid criticism, and it highlights the challenges of navigating complex ethical dilemmas. So, where does all of this leave us? We've explored utilitarianism, deontology, and touched on virtue ethics, but the truth is, there's no single right answer to the question of wealth and poverty. These ethical frameworks provide valuable lenses through which we can examine this complex issue, but ultimately, it's up to each of us to grapple with these ideas and develop our own ethical compass. The goal isn't to tell you what to think, but to encourage you to think critically about these issues and to engage in meaningful conversations about wealth, poverty, and our responsibilities to one another. The world is a messy, complicated place, and there are no easy answers. But by engaging in thoughtful dialogue, challenging our own assumptions, and being willing to listen to different perspectives, we can start to build a more just and equitable world for everyone. Alright, let's dive into the heart of the debate. Wealth creation drives innovation, economic growth, and improves living standards. The desire for a better life and financial security has fueled human progress. Entrepreneurs and innovators are motivated by financial rewards. They take risks, and sometimes they strike gold. New businesses create jobs and improve living standards. Wealth creation driven by ethics can be a powerful force for good. Proponents of wealth accumulation argue that a rising tide lifts all boats. As the wealthy become wealthier, their prosperity trickles down, creating jobs and stimulating economic growth. This idea, known as trickle-down economics, has been a cornerstone of conservative policy for decades. Critics argue it primarily benefits the wealthy, doing little to address income inequality or poverty. The debate continues with no easy answers in sight. Now, let's flip the script and consider the arguments in favor of wealth redistribution. Those who advocate for a more equitable distribution of wealth often argue that it's not just a matter of economics, but a moral imperative. They argue that extreme wealth inequality is inherently unjust, and that we have a moral obligation to create a fairer system that ensures everyone has the opportunity to thrive. One of the central arguments here is that vast wealth disparities undermine the very principles of democracy and equality. When a small elite holds a disproportionate amount of wealth and power, it can distort political systems, influence policy decisions in their favor, and create an uneven playing field where the voices of the wealthy drown out the concerns of the majority. Advocates for wealth redistribution often point to the social and economic benefits of a more equitable society. They argue that reducing inequality leads to lower crime rates, improved public health outcomes, higher levels of educational attainment, and a stronger overall economy. They believe that by investing in the well-being of all members of society, we create a more prosperous and harmonious world for everyone. In recent years, there's been a growing movement calling for more radical solutions to wealth inequality, with some even advocating for a world without billionaires. They argue that the very existence of billionaires is a sign of a broken system, one that allows a select few to amass unimaginable fortunes while billions struggle to make ends meet. They point to the fact that no one, no matter how hard they work or how innovative they are, could ever amass $1 billion on their own. They argue that such extreme wealth is only possible through a system that allows for the exploitation of labor, the extraction of resources, and the concentration of wealth in the hands of a privileged few. Proponents of this view often advocate for policies such as significantly higher taxes on the wealthy, a wealth cap, and robust social safety nets to ensure that everyone has access to basic necessities like healthcare, education, and housing. They believe that by fundamentally restructuring our economic system, we can create a more just and equitable world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. Let's look at real-world examples of wealth and ethics. It's not just about how much money someone has, but how they use it. Take Bill Gates, for example. Gates revolutionized technology and committed to philanthropy. Through his foundation, he's donated billions. Warren Buffett, known for his frugal lifestyle, also pledges to give back. These examples show wealth can be a force for good. Section 2. The Gates Foundation, a philanthropic powerhouse. Let's zoom in on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for a moment. This philanthropic behemoth has become a major player in global health and development, tackling issues like infectious diseases, maternal and child health, and access to education. Their work has saved countless lives, particularly in developing countries. The foundation's approach is often praised for its data-driven strategies, its commitment to innovation, and its willingness to partner with governments and organizations on the ground. They've made significant strides in combating diseases like polio, malaria, and HIV/AIDS, and they've invested heavily in developing new vaccines and healthcare technologies. However, the Gates Foundation has also faced its fair share of criticism. Some argue that their immense wealth and influence give them an outsized role in shaping global development agendas, often at the expense of local communities and their priorities. Others criticize their ties to corporations and their investment strategies, which some say contradict their philanthropic goals. The Gates Foundation's story is a complex one, highlighting the potential and the pitfalls of large-scale philanthropy. It raises important questions about power, accountability, and the role of private wealth in addressing global challenges. Section 3. The Bezos Conundrum: Innovation versus Inequality. Now let's talk about Jeff Bezos. The founder of Amazon, Bezos is one of the wealthiest people on the planet. He revolutionized e-commerce, transforming how we shop. But his wealth has drawn scrutiny over Amazon's labor practices and impact on small businesses. Critics argue Amazon's growth leads to exploitative conditions and tax avoidance. Small businesses struggle to compete with Amazon. Bezos's wealth creation has widened the gap between rich and poor. He counters with job creation and renewable energy investments, and his philanthropy includes climate change and homelessness efforts. However, critics remain skeptical. The Bezos conundrum highlights the complex nature of wealth creation. It forces us to confront the trade-offs between innovation, economic growth, and social justice. Section 1. The Weight of Wealth. So, we've explored the complexities of wealth and poverty, delved into ethical theories, and examined real-world examples. We've seen how wealth can be a force for good, driving innovation and lifting people out of poverty. But we've also seen its dark side, the potential for exploitation, the widening gap between the haves and the have-nots, and the erosion of our social fabric. The question remains, is it ethical to be rich in a world where so many struggle to survive? There's no easy answer, no simple solution. It's a question that should weigh heavily on all of us, especially those who benefit most from the current system. Because here's the thing, ignoring the problem won't make it go away. Pretending that extreme wealth inequality isn't a moral issue doesn't absolve us of our responsibility to address it. We can't just throw up our hands and say, that's just the way the world is. We have a moral obligation to create a fairer, more just system where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. Shaping a more just future. What can we do? tackle global wealth inequality, it's on all of us. Educate ourselves, support causes, and vote for equality. Change requires effort. The time for action is now. Thanks for watching.